The City of Monona Plan Commission, Monday, May 11th, 2020. I call the meeting to order. Call the roll.
Chair Moore,
Here.
Alder Schilling,
Here.
Ms. Fox,
I think she's muted.
Mr. Peterson,
Here.
Ms. Fallett,
Here.
Mr. Homburg,
Here.
Mr. Holmquist.
Here.
Mr. Stein is excused.
Great. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from April 27th, 2020?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any additions, corrections, deletions?
I have one minor, this is Chris, I have one minor correction on the first page, the bottom line, Doug. Delete and some of the side. What it's talking about is the parking spaces, which there's 2 in the front, and it says and some on the side. There's nothing on the side there, and in the back building.
Thanks.
It could be some in the back building. It's debatable how many, or you could just leave it as some in the back of the building, but take out the side.
Great. Any others? All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the minutes carried. Appearances. Do we have anybody for appearances this evening? Seeing none, I'm going to move the agenda items here a little bit tonight and go directly to new business. For some reason, I kind of think the public hearing for Galway might be a little longer, and I think it'd be unfair of us to hold up Greg Jones for an evening. So I'm going to suggest that we move to new business number 6A for pre-conference on request by Greg Jones of Dave Jones, Inc. for consideration of a zoning permit for a new accessory building at 2251 Fieldgust Road, case number 2-006-2020. Greg, you're up to tell us about this project, if you would. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. First of all, I want to thank you for allowing me notice on your agenda with such short notice, and the timing of the project is essential to us. We're proposing a 1,200 square foot outbuilding, 40 by 30, in the back parking lot of our service and remodeling building at 2251 Kilgust Road. We're looking to have Cleary Building Corporation put up the building, and it will be used to conduct hands-on training to our construction workers. It will not need a restroom, as we have restrooms available in all 3 of our facilities nearby on Kilgust Road. As I mentioned, the timing of the building is essential to us. If completed quickly, it will allow us to provide hands-on training to dozens of people who would normally be laid off due to workload. Due to the pandemic, we'll soon be experiencing shortages in our workload starting in early June. Many of our upcoming projects have been delayed or canceled. So instead of laying people off, we wanted to use the time to provide hands-on training to our team. Ideally, we would do that on job sites, but with the pandemic, it's not safe to send extra people to site. It doesn't allow for social distancing and other safety measures to take place. So this building would provide us a controlled open air environment in which we can provide hands-on skill training. We can limit the number of people in the building at one time, and we can sanitize the work area in between each use. We anticipate that no more than 1 to 4 people would be in the building at one time, and it would occur during our normal business hours, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Although the need right now is very urgent, we would intend to keep the building there long-term for training. It's a key part of what we're doing as a company, and it will be going forward. For example, it's an ideal way to train new hires before they go to the job site for the first time. They could spend their first week in our training building, getting accustomed to our process and procedure and how to use the tools and things like that. We employ over 100 apprentices actually in multiple trades. So training is something that we always have a need for. I did attach a preliminary sketch of the building. It's a very simple 40 by 30 metal building with an open shell. And we did find a color, they call it ash gray, I believe, that is nearly a perfect match to the existing building. I've attached an aerial photo as well. We're looking at putting it right behind our current building, providing about a 20-foot gap in between the two buildings, and would not be visible from the street. We currently have 63 parking spots behind that building and 90 overall on that property. This building would only reduce that number by 8. And to give you some perspective of the size of that back parking lot, this building would only take up about 3% of the square footage that we have available back there. So from a parking standpoint, we're not concerned about losing the extra spots. And that's all I have.
Okay. Great, thank you. Well, we'll open it up to the committee now for any kinds of feedback or questions that you have. Chris?
Yes, ma'am. I just asked first, Doug, do you have a report on it?
Yes, I do. Most of it was covered by the applicant, but just procedurally, this does require the zoning permit because it's an addition to the property. So this request was too late to be heard for the formal hearing tonight. So we thought that the pre-hearing would be a good way to give Mr. Jones some clarity and sort of guidance from the commission in advance of this. There is a bit of a lead time on the building as well, so it could help with that. A couple of things I called out at the bottom there in the staff report for recommendations. Really the compatibility with the existing building, which, as was mentioned, the color is very similar and the materials look to be pretty similar as well. The parking that was mentioned, so 8 spaces reduced or taken away out of the 90 overall. And then also how, if at all, this maybe transitions from a more of a training, how it evolves, how it changes in a post-COVID situation with maybe more people in the building training at any time. But for the most part, you know, the applicant laid out the case pretty well there, and I don't have too much to add.
Thank you. Apologies. I didn't mean to omit you. I was focused so much on the other project tonight that
No problem.
I neglected to think about your report. Chris?
Yes, ma'am. Before I start, Greg, I saw you mentioned in your letter that you're proud to call Monona home. Well, I think I can speak for the entire Plan Commission when I say that we're very, very proud to have you in our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Question, the building ridge, does that run parallel to your existing one or perpendicular, the proposed building ridge?
That would run parallel.
Oh, really? So then you'll be entering from the end down by the wetlands or the preserve.
No, when you come around the back of the building, the sliding door, the barn style door, would be facing directly at you to the south.
Well, it's so hard for me because everything's at a 45 on your property, so I'm not sure. So if I came along the right side of that existing building, I turned left, would I be looking at the door?
You would be.
Okay, so then the ridge line will probably be perpendicular to the existing one because they usually put those on the non-bearing sides under the truss that way. I mean, it could be the other way. The reason I asked is I was there and I looked it over, and it seems to me that you probably won't even lose 8 stalls, because if you have it that way, you're coming in and take a left, where your driveway comes around the backside right now, that'll be blocked now by the building. So that really actually opens up a couple more parking spots for you. Just makes it a dead end parking lot. Right?
Yeah, we were being conservative in the number just because we have such a large number of spaces already.
Yeah, I think to me, when I was there, you have that drive aisle, so you only lose 2 on that side, and I thought 4 on the side by the building. So I thought it was a loss of 6, and you could probably gain 2 and back. So you're only losing 4 stalls. Yeah. So that's why I was assuming you're running the ridge line that way, and that you'd enter from that door. So I like that. I'm glad the color is there. I walked around. There's nobody that can see this building other than you. And I know we're particular on the facades and such in that area, but again, it matches what you have back there. I'm glad to see that you have softened fascia. It so dresses up a pole building. It makes it look a lot better, a lot more of a long-term solution, I think. So I think it's appropriate use. I think it's a great idea, and I hope we can get it done right away. Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Chris. Christy?
Yeah, I went out there today too, because I couldn't envision your space out there where this was, but it looked like it just a couple parking stalls possibly lost, but you have a lot of room out there. You know, I love the way you're responding with a novel solution to keep your people employed. Congratulations on being able to act quickly and get this done. And kudos to you, Doug, for fitting this in. I think it seems great. I'm really excited that you can do it. And congratulations on your 2020 Best of Madison Gold.
Thank you.
Great. Corinne?
I have no further comments on this. Just agree that with what everyone else is saying, that it seems appropriate, look good. I'm glad you can figure out a way to keep moving.
Okay. Thank you. Josh?
You know, not much more to add. Thank you for trying to keep people employed during this tough time.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Susan?
I don't have anything to add, really. I thought it looked fine. I went out and looked at the site too, and it looks like it fits well. Fits well with the design, is very appropriate. And I guess the only question is how many would be future use, but we can talk about that later. I don't have any concerns about it. I think it's great.
Okay, great. Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, no other questions or concerns. Went to the site, looks good.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. I just concur with everyone on the committee. Really glad you could figure something out, Greg, for your employees. Congratulations and continued best wishes for your company getting through this mess and keeping going.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Now-
Please give Aaron and Steve a hard time for me tonight.
We'll do best we can. We're pretty good at that.
All right. Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's move back then, if we can, to number 5, unfinished business. A, public hearing on request by Galway companies for approval of Phase 2 precise implementation plan, PIP, of the Huayra Commons for a 140-unit residential building at 6406 Bridge Road, case number 2-002-2020. Who's up?
All right. I'm gonna share my screen, okay?
Yeah.
How's that?
Great.
Looks good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone. My name is Adam Fredno, JLA Architects, presenting the final phase of the Huayra River redevelopment, or the current 2. Proposed project consists of 145 market rate apartments, 72% of which are studios and 1 bedrooms, 28% of which are 2 and 3 bedrooms. Amenities include generous club room and fitness center, dramatic entry lobby. That's 2-story space, 2 levels of parking, the 158 bike spaces currently, and a large green roof common area with pool. Aaron and Steve, of course, are with us today, and they'll speak after I kind of get through some of these exterior images. The last time we came before the Plan Commission for an informational presentation on January 27th, there was some general concern regarding the articulation of the Bridge Road elevation. We feel considerable improvements were attained with proportional refinements, as well as the addition of 5 units that are on the first floor or upper level parking. So this is on the same level as the private parking level. This allows us to add fenestration and balconies where possible. Some of the other changes from last time include the 2-story glass along with the vertical elevator is now express proud of the building front as opposed to having the spandrel materials cross in front of it. And we widened out these metal panel bays just to get portions looking a little more comfortable. I think the material distribution on the front is now consistently applied throughout. So the materials are similar to the phase 1 project. The dark metal panel is from Millennium Forms in Elkhorn. Of course, the Summit Brick, St. Charles, sort of cream city color. The Monterey taupe panel would be the flat panels on the building, which have those reveal joints similar to phase 1. The dark gray and the wood tone would be lap siding applications, and the wood tone is also on the soffit, similar to phase 1. Let's zoom in a little bit here. Bear with me for a second. So on the buildings, you can see we've got lap siding for the wood tone and the dark gray. That's the Monterey taupe, and of course the brick piers that come up. The brick is now at the sort of wainscot height of the second level parking, allowing materials to transition a little more seamlessly. Back to that over here. Here you have the Bridge Road elevation and the north side elevation, and you can see some of these openings on the lowest level are just that, wall openings. The lower level parking would not be heated and would be free to access for public parking. Here you have the park side elevation as well as the south, and the miscellaneous ones in between. So this is where the club room is on the courtyard, side courtyard wall. Got brick coming up to a wainscot height there, and then on the corners. Jumping into some of these perspectives, now a lot of these images a lot of you have seen before. I realize there's some new people, but one of the organizing concepts for this master plan a few years back was to really set up the importance of Grand Crossing Park, really create a backdrop for a fantastic public space for Monona. And one of those things that really helped reinforce that is by having the green roof of this multifamily building be on access with the park, albeit a hockey stick type access, but it really offers some dramatic connections that are multi-leveled and makes for a very dynamic space as you move through Inland Way and the Grand Crossing Park. This is a shot this is outside of the club room on phase 1, looking over where the ice rink was and up to that green roof up here. So front and center on the building, this of course is the pool right behind here. This isn't finalized by any means yet. The concept is to have something artistic there to really create a nice looking wall facing the park. So these things could be backlit and have a really nice effect. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion that happens still on what exactly that ends up being. This is just from the top of the stairs outside of True and Forage. Yeah, I know the railings look really dark in the renderings. They would be the same cable railings that we have in this phase, so they do become a lot more transparent in real life. This would be a look as you turn onto Inland Way from Broadway. And then coming up the street behind Monona Bank, in between building and heading down towards the park. The shot a little further back of Bridge Road. You can kind of see the material transition and coming around the building with the different colors and textures. This would be on the north side of the building, coming up in the way across from the yacht club. This entrance here is for refuse collection. we really wanted to improve that situation from phase one, so it was critical that we get this right with how the service providers want to access and collect from the building. Another shot from the park. And of course, from another aerial perspective, you can see the building is pretty maxed out on this site. If you guys recall, the site was a little bit bigger before. Additional street parking was designed in around the periphery. Squeeze the site down a little bit, but everything seems to work out well. One more shot, seeing the pool up a little closer. And of course, the metal panel form on here likely has some signage on it. And we're pulling some of the, potentially some of the wood structures through this project at select locations as well. And the shot looking out from a balcony, probably 4th floor, over the park into the river. So landscaping wise, like I said, the green roof is very generous. It's a nice large space, but we did still want to have grass area for people to hang out, play, and just a great space like a yard that wouldn't otherwise be available. So heavier landscaping around the perimeter to give some sense of privacy to the people that have walkouts right onto that roof surface. We've got some central mulch and flowers, landscaping in the middle around the intersections of some walking paths. So these are just different paving patterns. And then there's a fire pit in the middle. Pool is being designed out on the edge here. And of course, I'm not the expert on the plants, but Olson Toon does a great job. I won't talk to this too much. These are just the lighting plans. It sounds like there might be a pole that needs to move to the other side of the sidewalk, but otherwise things are calcing out per Monona standards. Photometrics. We've talked to the next few items. Steve?
What's that? Okay. Adam, can you actually go back to, I think it's slide 4? I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Bridge Road elevation, something we've discussed a lot internally. This is one of many iterations we looked at. As some of you may know, we submitted for Plan Commission and we're planning to come a couple of weeks ago, and we just couldn't get comfortable with what we had proposed on Bridge Road. We've been trying very, very hard and trying to be cognizant about bringing the Bridge Road elevation down to a manageable level where the building does not feel too massive along Bridge Road, even though the building is a very, very big building. And so one of the things that we explored pretty extensively was bringing 5 walk-up units in along Bridge Road. And actually the plan set that we submitted a couple weeks ago had those. The issue with them that we ran into is the building is not, that first floor of the building you're looking at is not level with the sidewalk. And so in order to bring walkouts there, we would have had to bring a stairwell out that then shifted to the side and essentially made it look like more of a wall. The side or the stairwell out of the unit wouldn't come straight out to the sidewalk like a traditional walk-up townhouse type feel, because there's utility easement in there that would prevent us from doing so. So we were pretty disappointed about that. We wanted to try to do walk-ups there, but we were able to come up with this option, which I think is still really good, and it brings that first floor level down to a more feelable option. So those are actually 5 units that you look at that you enter in from the top private parking garage. There's no internal corridor. And so you enter into those units through a vestibule, and they're smaller one-bedroom units with more of a kind of individual feeling. So I just wanted to talk about Bridge Road. I know it was something that was definitely a point of contention at the last Plan Commission meeting, and there was an interest from all Plan Commission members to bring down the scale of this. So we've tried to work very hard on that. Adam, if you want to go to that last slide, I guess the parking garage entrance. And then zoom.
Is that okay?
Yeah, so a couple other, one thing before I even, I guess, get to this point, I'm reading, or we read in some of the staff comments today about the parking, and I just want to touch on that because as it relates to our agreement with CDA. We are currently showing 283 parking stalls. I think the plan set had a misprint and said 284, but the project is currently showing 283 stalls. We would need, as the project is proposed right now, we would need 227 stalls, which leaves 56 stalls for the public. Now we have to provide, in our agreement with CDA, we have to provide 58 stalls. And so I guess what we're looking for tonight is approval to maybe work with staff on that. We will provide the 58 public stalls in addition to what our project is required to have per code. And that may involve us removing a unit or two from our project to make sure that we meet code, plus provide 58 stalls designated, for the CDA, per our agreement with the CDA. We have a little bit of flexibility in our plan set to maybe add a stall or two. So we may not have to remove 2 units, but it's looking as of right now, we may have to remove 1 unit, potentially 2 for sure. And it's our intention to meet that commitment with CDA and provide at least 58 stalls above what our project is required to have per code. So then the next thing is, with this plan in front of us, the parking entrances. As most of you know, this is 2 parking decks with the building on top of it. And it's been a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle trying to figure out what is the best way to enter the project for both decks, because there is no internal ramp between the decks. You have to enter them at 2 different heights. And in the plan set and the civil set, one of the options that we looked at was entering the project kind of on the corner of Huayra and Inland Way. And if you look at some of the renderings, that's one option that we proposed. The more that we looked at that, the more that option, while it is very visible to the park and meets the objective of making that parking garage entrance visible to the public as they're going to the Grand Crossing Park, it comes with too many challenges, we think, that are going to be too hard to overcome. There's not enough throat to enter the garage. There's a sidewalk that comes through there. And it would be a very, very steep pitch down into the parking garage. So what we are proposing is what Adam has shown on his plan set right now, where the parking garage entrances would be right next to each other. And as you come in off Huayra Lane, you would enter 1 ramp to go up, you would enter 1 ramp to go down. We've shown on the plan set a potential option to put a curb median in between the 2 to control just separation of traffic. I think there's an opportunity to flare some of those curbs to open up the mouth into the garage. But we think that this option, out of discussing all the options with our engineers and architects and civil, is going to be our best option in terms of providing ease of access for not only our residents, but for the public to enter that lower level. and also keeping it proximate to the Grand Crossing Park. I think the last thing I had before we can kind of open it up and talk about comments, this is, I guess, that Adam put together to show what it looked like off Huayra Lane. But the last comment I had is, I know there's been, we certainly did solar on our phase 1 project. We've got a study coming up right now to determine what that first year looked like. And we're exploring it for this project. We are going to make the building solar ready, but have not committed to actually putting the panels on until we see what the results are from at least one solid year of operating history in phase 1. So I think that's all I had. I'm sure there'll be several questions, and we're happy to and excited to answer them.
Great.
Yes, so Justin Bemparty from Beer Bicker is also here. If there are civil related questions, he can help answer those.
Okay.
But otherwise, Aaron, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you guys covered pretty much, everything that I was kind of thinking about maybe touching on. I mean, we've vetted these entries into the building, I mean, at every which angle and every grade possible. And I think that where we're at now is probably the most efficient way to accomplish both things. But there's still plenty to work through there as far as details with that entry and exit and stuff. And we understand that. We'll continue to work for something that works at that location.
Okay. Great. If you guys don't have anything else to add at this juncture, we'll close the public hearing on your request. And we will open 5B, consideration of action on request by Galway companies for approval of a phase 2 precise implementation plan, PIP, of Huayra Commons for 140 unit residential building at 6406 Bridge Road, case number 2-002-2020. Doug, would you like to start us off?
Thank you. So I'll just run through the staff report that I provided. There's been some information that's already been shared by the applicant tonight that I had called out, mainly the bike parking and the public parking and the access and those types of things. But I'll run through just quickly the pieces that I want to call out. So I did, take a PASITA recommendation with a couple findings of facts and conditions of approval, which certainly there can be edits and suggestions to those. I think there's a couple additional things that may come in. In terms of the architecture, I think calling out a couple, the two corners there, sort of at Bridge Road, both Huayra Lane and Inland Way, there are still, and I think this builds on the discussion from the January meeting, there's still some blank wall space there. And I don't know in terms of the renderings and how the landscaping plays with that, but just on the perspective views, it did still seem to be there and worth calling out. And also, I was encouraged to hear from Adam tonight about the screening wall covering the pool equipment. I know there was once again discussion about that at the January meeting, but I think certainly some more discussion and design concepts for that I think would be good. The site design in terms of lot coverage, I think it's just important to call out some of those numbers, the percentages, the percentage at grade, given the site constraints and the massing of the building, comes up to about 11,500 square feet, so around 13%. But obviously adding in the green roof takes it to 35%, which is over the 30% requirement for code. And so, I'd be interested maybe to hear a little bit more about the green roof specifically and the design for those, and encouraged to hear about the solar as well, the solar ready. I think the applicant gave some more information about the setbacks and specifically the walk-up units, the easements there and the challenges that brings. I do think it addressed in some ways the visual along Bridge Road that was the feedback again from the January meeting. of just looking to get a little bit more interaction there at street level, particularly for the pedestrians. Moving through the vehicle access, the parking, I think most of that has been laid out. Certainly, we have Chair Stolper as well here from the CDA for that portion of it, but the applicant outlined the 58 public stalls. And you also see a little bit of discussion in the letter from Strand, the review letter, about the parking and a couple spaces being taken out on Huayra Lane there. Just to think about that as well. The pedestrian and bike access, I think it was 158 bike stalls. There's 3 different interior bike parking space sort of areas. And speaking to Adam as well, he mentioned that there's also the plan to put as many racks as possible at grade, sort of on the exterior of the building. Both, I'd imagine, on the park side, it may well be both public and residents using it, but as the same as phase 1, as many bike parking at grade as possible. It seems that's the plan. Lighting, I think, was outlined pretty well by Strand. Some of the comments there about sort of the continuity with the rest of the whole master plan, making sure the materials and product are similar. And just a couple things to figure out about private versus public location of those lights, and maybe a little bit of light trespass as well. Signage, I think it was, this was brought up again in the January meeting about really delineating with the access and the ramps and things like that, making sure that the public and private ramps are specifically called out, so that the public know firstly where to enter with their vehicle, but also the right doors and access with which to return to the vehicle, maybe after having been at the park or something like that, making sure that that's clear, and just having some sort of unified signage would be a good recommendation. Landscaping, I had scored out with the help of the landscaping team the number of trees and the points. Given the large number of parking stalls, it does fall short of that. But I think it's a fair discussion to have that sort of combined with the green roof. How does that meet the landscaping goals and the intent of that? And then on the back page, you'll see comments. This was shared with all department heads here at the city. And you'll see it sort of broken out, the comments. And that's where actually a lot of the suggested conditions came from in terms of feedback as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We're going to move on to questions now, unless our presenting team has anything else they want to add before we get to those questions. We'll go ahead and start then and have the committee ask their questions. Chris, do you want to start?
Sure, love to. Okay, I'm not gonna be able to see the people, am I? First thing I would like to say is I love what you've done with the Bridge Road facade. I think what was before very kind of monotone, it's really interesting. I love having that 2-story glass entrance, and I like having some units on Bridge Road and facing there. There'll be a little human element. So I think you've done a great job on Bridge Road. It's still, as you said, Steve, it's a massive building, and it is. But I think you've really created a much, much better facade, and I'm very happy with Bridge Road. I understand, Doug, about landscaping, and they do. When we look at the landscape plan, they've got a couple trees on that corner. But I think you've really solved the biggest issue I had with the entire plan set. I do have a question for the underground parking coming in the south. Would that be southwest corner of the building? What direction is that? Kind of south entrance? Yes, thank you. That's going to be twice as wide now with your proposed change, right? You'll have 2 lanes in and out of your private area, plus 2 lanes in and out of the public area, correct?
Right. Yep, that'll be 2 20-foot wide entrances.
Okay. So we'll lose a few more stalls in there.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
just something we'll have to look at in the final tally. On the landscaping, we generally have this issue with underground parking, where sometimes there isn't enough room. And I think this is one of the first times in Monona I can remember we have 2 levels of underground parking. I think you've put a lot of landscaping in there. I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's, when you're going to have 2 layers of underground parking with so little green space, I think it's hard to get the points in that are required. I think you've done a pretty good job of putting what you can in there without overdoing it. So for me, I'm very happy with the landscape. I wish Rob were here to comment on it, because my eyes are pretty old for looking at all those tables on the size plans we have. But overall, I think for the points, the saturation, I like the landscape. I like the way it's turned out. I have, if I could switch gears, I have a number of questions that really, a lot of them will go to you, Josh. You're on here, yes?
Yep.
Okay, so, well, let me go through your engineering report first. Item 3, we talk about the permeable pavement areas, and the applicant's going to be going through those. And I believe the city's intent is to put permeable back in where we don't have drive lanes. Obviously, where they're putting in their driveway, we would leave regular asphalt there. But I think it's really critical for the applicant to be aware, and their site contractor to be aware of what's below there. There is open graded base course and drain tile. And if they were to get into that and contaminate it, it would contaminate that entire bed on that side. You know, Josh, what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So this somehow to remember that when they have their pre-construction meeting with the site contractor, you can really address that area. And I'm not sure if they're even proposing on replacing that asphalt that's there. And that gets me back to condition 10, where we talked about a 50-foot wide patch, because I know it's a city standard. If you're going to patch, you got to go a minimum of 50 feet. It looks to me, if they're not changing grade there, they could almost cut it tight and maybe even pour some of those islands adjacent to and not mess up our pavement. And I think you'd agree, if they can do that, it would be a win-win. It saves them money, and we don't have patches in our road. And I think that would be an ideal situation, and something, if we could strive for. I think it saves them money, and it really gives us a better final product, because I know the mill and overlays are better than a patch sometimes, but sometimes they're worse than a patch. You know, so if we can avoid the mill and overlay, even if it's a very tiny area by those curbs, that would be nice. And then one of your comments on that was not to saw the curb head off. Can I ask why, and replace the curb instead?
It's just, if it's new construction, you know, and they're tearing all that sidewalk out and they're putting new ramp in there, then we just thought it'd all be clean.
I agree with all that, except that, again, this is right over the permeable bed, and it was all poured integral. And if they saw the head off, that will probably stay and react with the rest of the curb better than completely removing it and putting a new piece in. And so if they're not going to change the grade on that asphalt, again, then we have no patches on that asphalt right there either. We've got a good tight edge that we already have, because I doubt we'd replace the driveway with permeable. I would hope we wouldn't. We'd leave that regular asphalt.
Right. Yeah.
So all I'm saying is to keep that open for an option. If they saw that head and the grades will work, I agree with the sidewalk. They've got to take the sidewalk down and back. And I think you illustrated how far they need to do it. But that still keeps them out of our pavement. And I think every little bit we can keep them out of our pavement, that's going to be better for us. And again, it'll save them a little money. So again, I think that might be a win-win.
Makes sense.
One question is there. A question on your item number 8 talks about the middle entrance to the development off of Inland Way, and that it may be too steep for ADA, but they have other entrances. Does every entrance have to be ADA accessible, or they just have to have so many? Because I'm thinking, we have a lot of grade issues here with the way this building's being sited in here. And I think somebody really, really put their thinking cap on between our last meeting and this one. They've come up with some great solutions. But that sidewalk you're talking about, I wonder if that couldn't be a little steeper. It's just, that's one spot where it's not ADA accessible. I think that's something just to work with our architect on and make sure we hit code, obviously, and standards, but perhaps they're okay with one not being ADA. I had a question on general stormwater management, item 3. You're looking for watershed delineation information. I'm not sure what that, I mean, that's a standard condition. I'm not sure what that would be on this plan.
Yeah, my stormwater guys put that on there, and I don't know, Chris, exactly what they were looking for.
I think it's a standard bullet point, but I think we all agree. I think you did the master design on this entire site and designed it for that building. So I'm just thinking it's all been done, other than they're saying, you know, they'll have a roof drain and some minor stormwater. I would think that could happen without a major stormwater design again or something, because basically you did it already for the city.
Right. I mean, they are looking to get a bunch of exemptions and whatnot. I mean, putting something
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Something formal together would be nice, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A letter describing all that. Yeah. I'm just saying a stormwater study or something. I'm not sure. The letter on the exemptions, absolutely. I'm talking about for the little bit of storm sewer they have. I think we're in pretty good shape, and we've accommodated all that in our original designs, I believe.
Not that site, I don't believe so. And the city staff made kind of a comment too, wanting something specific for that. Brad and Dan both mentioned that, but they want to make sure it's
okay. Specific how so? Because we knew what the impervious was going to be here, correct? When you did your design, or is impervious? Yeah. So I'm not sure where we haven't accommodated for that, but I'm just saying we can work with them without making them do additional calculations if we've already done them. That's all. Under utility items, I suspect then this came for Brad or Dan, number 6, they wanted a catch basin before the water from that southwest entrance comes over the sidewalk. Right? If I could. The southwest entrance where it's now proposed with a double entrance, and the one is actually going to be, yes, thank you. The stormwater report talks about it. We have an inlet right in the corner, right? Yep, thank you. And you're talking about putting inlet right behind the sidewalk to catch that water before it comes out. That, I believe that's how I read item number 6.
Yeah, it's in that same area, but now that's different with that driveway there, is it not?
That's my comment, because that one half is actually going down, so you're not catching any water there. The one that's coming out, it's a fairly small area, and it has traffic on it. So I'm thinking to add another inlet for that small area might be, again, you're gonna be tearing into the curb, tearing in the inlet, might be more harm than good. It's such a small drainage area, and with the cars coming in and out over that sidewalk, the salt they carry in and out will keep that area clean.
Do you really think we're going to be able to construct this, Chris, without disrupting all that base under there and everything that you guys did? I just don't believe that's true.
If they don't change the grade from the curb out, I think they can. And I think you could cut in those 2 islands. I think if you're really careful, you could saw right on the edge of the flag and pour those in there, because they're just to delineate traffic, and you're going to match grade. So if they're not changing grade there, now if they come back to us and say, you know, be able to do this, we're going to have to change grade coming out towards Huayra Lane, then they can.
Right.
So, and all I'm just bringing up points, and I'll probably ask the applicant just to make sure they've gone through all this and they're in agreement with everybody on what needs to happen there.
Does everybody, with this up here now, Chris, and you can see this entrance, just because we have it up here now, does everybody feel comfortable with how tight that's going to be getting in and out of there? Don't you think we're going to have to remove some of those islands even more?
I think we'd have to pull them back. I wouldn't take the one that's on the left of our screen. I wouldn't take it out the full 16 or 18 feet. I'd pull it back, give a radius. And the one that's on the bottom end or the right, I'd take that radius way back. I might start that radius almost at the curb line.
Right.
To allow some turning. And then lastly, I wouldn't take that retaining wall all the way out to the sidewalk. I try to have that transition a little bit back, so when they're turning in and out, you don't have a retaining wall right there. It gives you a little bit more room for your movement.
Right.
To me, those are all final details that the applicant work out with you.
Yeah, I agree.
And absolutely, if they are into the pavement we put down, then we have to be careful, because then we've got that open grade all exposed. And like I say, even though it won't be permeable on top of it, the other stuff carries through that area.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it would affect it. So I think it's delicate, but I think it could be done. Yes.
Chris, this is Justin Zamparty from Veerbecker.
Hi, Justin.
In regards to the Huayra Lane, the intent was we were not going to be changing any of the pavement grade there. That was why we were proposing to cut the curb head off, make the sidewalk transition, through the drive apron, and then have the drives coming in. So really, all we would be doing is cutting in those islands.
Right, and I believe you could cut those in tight with no patching if you're careful.
Correct.
And I agree with Josh's comment on nice to have new curb where we've got new curb, but I think in this particular case with the open graded down there, the less disturbance we do to that, the better. And we'll still have to have a note on your plans, even where that sidewalk's being removed and replaced, because open graded might stretch a little bit behind the curb, to be real careful of that. I think you understand if we contaminate that, we really compromise the performance of that whole side of the road.
There's drain tile right under there, right under that.
Yep, agreed. Okay. One last comment, I think, on the engineering report. I see you've referenced our code on the light spill. My question would be, in this situation where, for example, we're on Bridge Road, if we have a little bit over 3-foot candles going onto Bridge Road, is that a bad thing? To light that up? I mean, we're talking a high traffic area now with this building. I think our light spill is being sensitive to your neighbors, but being right there on Bridge Road, and I would even argue Huayra Lane and Inland Way, I think a little extra light there for all the pedestrian traffic we're hoping to have around this area probably isn't a bad thing. So I don't think we want big glaring areas, but if there's a little light spill above and beyond our code's meant to protect the neighbors. In this case, I think it better lights the areas that we're trying to do, doesn't it?
When we did the street lighting, we had to scale it back. We were kind of requested at that point to scale it back. So we're just being cautious that we did scale the street lighting back some already. So
what? How many foot candles?
I don't remember. I just remember we had to scale it back from the standard street lighting.
Understood.
And everybody was worried about that development being over light polluted.
Yep.
With
everything I understand that, but 3-foot candles isn't very much.
No.
We have a much lower standard on our sites than we do in our streets. So I suspect you didn't scale it back all the way down to that. I don't know. It's a item to look at, I think.
Was the lighting that we saw on the plan going to be what was proposed, or is that just kind of, was it supposed to be the style? Like Doug, you mentioned, we pointed out as far as the bollards and the lights and everything's kind of a different style than the first phase. Steve and Aaron, was that done on purpose, or what's the thought on that? I thought when we first decided and talked about all this, we were really trying to coordinate the road and phase 1 and the park all together. And then this building has something a little bit different.
Yeah, I think that might just be an oversight, I think, at this point, because I really do think our intention was always to have everything between phase 1, the park, the hotel, and here be integrated with similar fixtures.
Okay.
Adam, is that I don't know if is
That's correct. I think that some of the images of those fixtures show it generically. There's colors available to match, but stylistically, the instruction was to get as close to, if not the same thing as we used on phase 1. I believe there was something about one of the fixtures potentially being discontinued and being from a different manufacturer. So I think the goal would be for them to match as close as possible, if not be the same thing as phase 1.
Thanks, Josh. That was my last question.
Well, one other question I have too, Chris, that you didn't bring up that we just pointed out was the 2 corners of this building. You can see them now, the one on Huayra Lane and the one down on Inland Lane. They get really close, Aaron, to the sidewalks, and Adam. So as you build that, you don't show any sidewalk coming out there, but are we going to be taking some sidewalk out there? And there's a tree, on one corner. I mean, I'm assuming you're going to have formwork and footings, and you're going to have to shore that, or what's your thoughts on those corners?
The reality is there's going to be a lot of broken sidewalk here.
Okay. That's fine.
I don't want to sit here and say that we're going to be able to protect it all.
Right.
We'll try to protect it, but this is a tight site. I mean, when we get in here and we have this whole foundation in, and I think that, I guess maybe, I don't know if you guys want me to talk right now, but I wanted to kind of address a couple of Chris's points because I think they're extremely valid. And we've talked through this as a team, and I've talked through it internally with my people. This is going to be challenging, and that pre-construction meeting here is going to be crucial, and just, staging and talking through some of these things that, we've got Bridge Road will be up to speed, Inland Way, all these roads are recently done, and we're going to have to be extremely careful. And, it's going to be challenging. It's going to be challenging, and there will be some things that we end up having to replace as a group. So, which is unfortunate, but we kind of knew that going into it with just based on timing.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Josh. The one thing I'd ask Aaron is, I understand the sidewalk, but you can somehow not get into that curb, because most of those areas you will get into then the base structure for the permeable pavement.
No, I understand.
Because you're going to be well below that sidewalk.
Yeah. Yeah, those two corners are, well, the two corners there and then the corners on Bridge Road are going to be all challenging.
Right. You might get into a little color too, so we'll just have to try to match up colors as best as we can when we get back to some of that colored pavement, concrete.
Okay. Good, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Corrine, you're up. Do you have any questions? Uh-oh.
Maybe she's muted.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Little Zoom fail. I mean, you've already talked a lot about the parking or the entrance into the parking area. And I guess that was an area that I had questions about. It seems really tight, but I see on here you're going to be talking to the fire department as well, because I'm assuming that the trucks also need to be able to get down under there if there's an issue in the garage, or is that not,
No.
is that something that they need to worry about? Because that's really steep and
No.
very small area.
Adam, do you want to address that?
Yeah, the fire trucks don't need to go into the building. It would be a very high garage space to do that. So usually it's not required. With perimeter access, so the fire truck can get all the way around the entire building is huge. They can park just about anywhere and reach different portions of the building, but to get underneath the building is not required.
Okay.
But would that be true with the EMS as well?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. And then I guess I had questions about the landscaping, but I understand the issue with how tight the site is. So maybe just the point that Doug had made about that corner that was kind of bare, considering whether or not there's an option to do some additional landscaping there. But the perennial mix that is shown on this plan, I think it's going to look really beautiful. It's going to be really nice. So other than that, I think you've addressed a lot of my questions.
Great. Thank you, Corrine. Josh?
Thanks, Nancy. Most of my questions have been answered, but I do want to come back to that corner, southeast corner, I believe. You had mentioned that you added 5 lower level units, and I noticed that it looks like there's an opportunity to add a 6th and just kind of even that out, though there's obviously substantial grade change along the Bridge Road elevation. Any reason why you didn't carry a 6th unit over to that far end?
We're too tight on parking.
Parking?
We'd love to, we're just too tight.
Got it. Another question. You have that beautiful green roof highlighted above the deck. I'm curious, was there any consideration about opening up access to that, stairwell or anything of that nature. Right now, it looks like the only access is from within the building. Is that true?
Yeah.
That is true, and we talked about that extensively, of potentially even, because ideally we'd love a stairwell down to the park, so if residents are at the park, they could walk up to that green roof. But I think the benefits of that are outweighed by the risks in terms of security, especially with the addition of the pool and having, people that are not residents being able to, get up to that area. I think there's just too many security risks with allowing, the public up there.
Sure. Okay. And then I guess the last comment that I had is just access to the parking, public parking section. Obviously that's shifted from what was submitted and reviewed by Strand. At least when I look at the renderings, so as I can get into the site plan a little closer, but I've frequented the first phase of the current beautiful development, but parking's been a real challenge, and I'm a relatively new resident to Monona. I worry about the intuitiveness of accessing that public parking based on where you've moved the entrance into it. And I'm also worried a little bit about both entrance and exiting that ramp. It looks to be a pretty significant elevation shift, and just coming hot out of that ramp, and then there's that parking area. I worry a little bit about it. So I'm just kind of curious why that's changed, why the approach has changed.
Well, so before we had the entrance, so a couple things. One, we're certainly open to conversation on this if the Plan Commission has a strong feeling about this, but we had the entrance kind of on the southeast corner right there. Adam, can you pull up the site plan, please?
Yep.
Actually, maybe even like the 3D aerial would be a little bit more intuitive, just of that angle showing that southeast corner of the building. Yeah, that'd be great. So our goal here was to originally put the public parking entrance right there, as you can see. And that's how we had submitted the project Plan Commission. It's intuitive, it faces the park. The goal is to make it so that, citizens of Monona that are coming to visit Grand Crossing Park have a place to park. If Parks and Rec is having a series of events there, or there's a big group of people that come in for ice skating, we want them to be able to find that. It's just that feels super close to the interconnection there, between the hotel and phase 2, and the grade change from that connector road down into the public parking area would be really steep.
Is it something that was addressed in the pre-hearing? And if so, I apologize.
No.
Okay.
No, it wasn't. So that's why we shifted it to, to make it next to the ramp that enters the private parking garage, because it just gives us a little bit more length to enter the garage area. It's certainly not closer to the park in terms of being able to see it from the park, but we will work closely with staff to sign it as parking available for the park, and we'll include some wayfinding so that folks can find it. In the other comment I think you can see is on that lower level parking area, there are walkways directly into that lower level parking area. So I think ultimately, while you may not be able to see it from the park, once you're inside and you're parked, you're under shelter until you walk out that front area directly to the park.
Steve, this is Chris. Could I ask how really steep is?
Adam, what was that grade? Was that grade like
Yeah,
12% or 13%?
It's not just the steepness of transitioning from A to B. It's because we got to go around a bend like that, and from the back of sidewalk down, if there's not enough length to make the turn. So you'd have to continue sloping under the building and also make an immediate right when you first go in the door. So it wasn't a safe condition for people traversing the entrance. Slope-wise, it just wouldn't have worked because we would have had to have the one where the sidewalk met the drive on one side would have been higher than the other. We potentially looked at jogging the sidewalk out, you know, where those grassed areas in the between parking stalls are, but ultimately we have a 6-inch, a 12-inch storm sewer down there. We've got electrical box right there as well. And adjusting the grade where the sidewalk naturally wants to be wouldn't have been without a lot of rework, and we still would have had the safety issues entering the building.
Okay, so the slope would have been similar. That's about 12% going down on your other version too. So it'd been a similar slope.
Right.
And that really accounts for starting that slope at the drive and not at the back of sidewalk, because that's really the only way that you can get down steep enough.
So your 12% was starting it at the main drive aisle on the other side of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Sidewalk would have been relocated out, and then you've got the utility issues.
Correct.
And then you still got the because I agree with John. I like that entrance, but we could do some nice signage where that sidewalk comes in to public access, could we not? That'd be a question for Steve or Aaron, where I'm pointing on my screen and I'm pretty sure nobody can see it.
Yeah, no, we certainly think we should be having some signage there, you know, on that corner to
where that sidewalk comes in.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Chris. I pushed, you know, Aaron and I both pushed very hard to get that entrance, you know, on that corner. As it's shown on the screen, it's just, I think it comes with a lot of challenges. I don't know that the challenges are worth it, you know?
Okay, and the one thing I'll add is the public will be parking on Huayra Lane, and that's where we park, and that's where we'd have it well signed for the additional parking.
Yeah.
The entrance off Huayra Lane. Okay.
Correct.
Josh, back to you.
Sorry.
It's all right.
No, I'm good.
It's all right. This is cool. I just wanted to make sure because I think it's obviously it's this parking ramp, the parking thing is definitely a challenge. So, Josh, what do you think about all those solutions just discussed?
I mean, I appreciate the discussion, and it sounds like it's an awful lot of effort, and I don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze necessarily, you know, after the discussion. So appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, Christy?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of reiterate what Chris said about the Bridge Road elevation. I had some concerns about that and was worried about that, but I think those work out really nice. And I think the elevated balconies are a kind of an added safety element. I know if I were going to live in one of those units, I'd rather it not be quite as accessible off Bridge Road. I think the parking ramps where the entrance, those kind of, they look like 11.7% grade and then like a 9% grade. Are you planning on having those heated, or what's the plan for de-icing? Water Tower Place has a ramp like that, and I tell you, it is treacherous in the winter. And you think people aren't going to walk on them and need to, but they do. And I can't tell you how many people I saw wipe out. And then I think about just needing a lot of salt on that and all that salt running right into the river. Is there a possibility of doing some underground heating element there? Because I'm also thinking about the EMS building, EMS personnel, if they can't get in there and they're having to run up and down those ramps, seems like it's potentially something that could be considered.
Yeah, I mean, I you know, it's funny you talk about heated driveways and stuff like that in Wisconsin, and it's a toss up of what's more socially, environmentally responsible. Do you heat that, waste the energy on that, or, you know, do you use salt? And I think there's a lot of areas in the country that have really good luck with heated driveways. If you look at, you know, even out in Colorado where it's, you know, it's cold, I think they have some success there, but, you know, they don't get the extreme cold and the humidity, the bone chilling cold that we get here. I would worry that if we heated those, I mean, the amount of energy that we would spend and trying to keep them up and the boiler that we would have to get to try to keep them heated would just be enormous. And we have a full-time maintenance guy that will be watching the building like a hawk and ensuring it's, pre-salted, minimally before big snows, and he'll be out there ensuring it's cleared and safe. So I think it's something we're just going to have to, aggressively manage.
Okay. Yeah, once salt is in the environment, there's no taking it out. So that's why I asked. I think that leads to like the landscaping challenges. I know with the landscaping that's down there right now, around this site, it looked like about a 50% loss on the small shrubs. The soil composition there is harsh. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have constant landscaping challenges, especially on Bridge Road, because it's going to be almost full shade. There'll be maybe an hour of the day when some sun hits that, but from a landscaping perspective, that's full shade. So I think you're going to have some serious challenges. It looked like you had, easily 60 small shrubs in the rendering there. You might want to reconsider that. They have junipers right now. I noticed Minota Bank, they do an immaculate job at their landscaping, and even their shrubs are struggling right there. They're junipers and they're all really struggling. Some of the evergreens can't handle that, especially arborvitae. But the soil is really acidic there, so that's going to be a challenge. So I know your landscaping plan looks good, but it's really hard to find shrubs that are going to be able to survive those conditions, especially on Bridge Road. I was going to say the screening wall under the pool. If you drive up over on East Main and look at the MG&E substation there, they've got some really cool art elements they've put on that. And one of those is, it kind of looks like what you have in the rendering. It's metal strips and they're in waves and they put acid on them. So they're really cool looking. It kind of actually would be complementary to your logo. Looks kind of neat. You might want to check that out just for a little inspiration if you need some. And I don't know if you've thought about what type of bike racks you'd get, but it sounds like you're going to have a lot. Do you have any ideas on what type of bike rack you might get?
We used, I think Aaron can correct me, but I think we used Ceres on our phase. And I'll tell you, with phase one, we've had to double what we originally put in. The bike parking has been very, very popular in the lower level of phase one, which is why you see the amount of bike parking we've included in this project.
Okay, yeah, the Ceres racks are great. I want to make sure you're using good racks, because boy, there's nothing worse than having your wheel tacoed. Yeah, sounds good. I think I had some concerns about the enormity of the building, but boy, I was down there today just really trying to envision it. It's going to really transform that area. It's going to be very urban, but I think it's just really going to look great. I'm pretty excited to see it.
Right. Thank you, Brian. That would be Brian Holmquist.
Yep, sorry, I'm here. I've been moving around the house trying to find a quiet location. Yeah, the vast majority of my questions have already been addressed in a variety of different ways. The one outstanding question, or one of the outstanding questions I have is, I'm trying to follow along to make sure that I'm not missing it. And is the trash pickup on the north side still?
Yes.
And so will that be, what will that drive surface be? Is that going to be
that'll probably be concrete.
Okay. And now we get to signage, because we wouldn't want anybody trying to enter over there. I assume it would just be a closed door.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't find the rendering here, so that helps. Other than that, all the other questions I think have already been addressed, and there's no need to rehash what we've already talked about.
Okay, great. Susan Fox.
Unmute. Same thing, really. Any questions I had been answered. I was really happy to see the design for Bridge Road. I think it looks great. I also favored the parking plan, the public parking access that's showed here, but from listening to the discussion, it seems like that's not a good option. I just had a question about when people are moving in and out, is the only main elevator that one at the front entrance, or is that where moving trucks would pull up? Or, I mean, I'm assuming they're not going down into the parking ramp, so I'm just wondering where that happens.
Yeah, that's correct. Both elevators are in that section. There's
This
one
section
that's
in the front.
larger. Yeah, so you've got one designated for move-ins, but
Okay.
they'd both be at that central hub there.
Okay, that
The
makes
moving
sense.
trucks would pull up on Bridge Road.
Yeah, I think you've done a great job with the density with, in such a tight area. And the only other thing I thought is on the corner by where the trash driveway pulls in, the northwest corner, I guess. I don't recall whether there was a tree shown in the landscaping plan, but looking at the elevation pictures, it looks like that might be an area where you could do something like that. Where somebody commented there was still a good amount of wall there, which there is, but it looks like you've got some things going on there that will mitigate against that. So I think it looks great. No more questions.
Great, thank you. I just had a couple of things. One is I just wanted to say kudos, as several people already have, about the additional massing you did, or especially on Bridge Road and also on the side facing the park. I think the mass of the building overall is a lot better. I think you guys did a lot of work on that, and it shows. I was kind of surprised because we talked quite a while about the articulation of the roof line and switching up the articulation of the roof line. And I went back and pulled all the perspectives from the last meeting, and it didn't look like the roof line actually changed at all. It just looked like you changed the bottom of the building and massing around the bottom of the, but we actually even talked about potentially letting go of a couple of units, like on each corner. If I remember correctly, that was something that Chris even talked about, was the whole idea of potentially, having some corner units that went away so that it wasn't all just one big flat. And I didn't, and instead, actually, we ended up with 5 more units rather than less units. And I know you said that you might get rid of some units anyway because of parking requirements, but I'm just wondering if there's a way to articulate the roof a little bit more, because it still is a big mass, and I just wonder if switching that up a little bit might help.
Yeah, so it's something that we definitely looked at. It's really tough to give up those end units like that, because there's a lot of construction that goes along with doing so, and you're also giving up probably your best units, because those are those units that are on the end there, on the 5th floor, frankly, they're probably our best units. Have lake view.
Sure. So,
and
okay. But that actually brings up another point that I just toss out there, and I realize that this is not, in a sense, not Plan Commission, but it very much relates to what you just said, Steve, which is when you guys have been figuring out the mix of what's in this building, I'm wondering if you ever considered doing a mix of rental and condos, because I kid you not, I probably don't go 10 days without me being stopped by somebody asking me if we're ever going to have condos in Monona. And it's actually, I would say 50% of my neighbors on Winnequa Road. Maybe it's just because I have so many 70-year-olds and 60-year-olds at this end of Winnequa, but they're looking to downsize. And, our comprehensive plan has different, calls for a lot of mixing. And so I just tossed that out there to you, not to discuss here because it's not a Plan Commission thing, but I just thought I'd throw it out there because I know there's lots of hotels these days that mix hotels with condos, et cetera. And this is going to be a beautiful building. So I could see those end units you were just talking about, even I could see it as being attractive from a purchase standpoint for some people. So
sure. No, that's a great comment. Yeah. It's something we've kicked around for sure. And these buildings are definitely set up to be condo ready, so they could be easily converted in the future.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. And then the only other thing that one was the screen around the pool. It showed your drawing showed one of the drawings showed a fence of sorts around the pool, but it definitely was not a fence that was lockable, and that was something that I'm assuming is going to be adjusted, because the fence that you had in your drawings looked like it was more of an aesthetic thing away from the pool, and I think what our public safety people were looking for was something that was a lockable safety feature.
Correct. Yes, it would be all the way around and lockable.
Okay, great. And then let's see if there was anything else here. I guess I share, I mean, I know that there isn't an easy solution, but I definitely share the concern that other folks have about the parking in and out being in that same location and only being one in out. It's the upper level, it's a lower level. That seems like an awful lot of parking to just have. If we had an event, as an example, at the park, and that public park area was full, it would take a long time to get 50, 60 cars out of one ramp. So just in terms of location, and also that solo ramp for such a big parking garage seems to me like, it just doesn't, it's worrisome to me. And I'm just wondering if there might be a way to, I don't know, have one of the other entrances be where the trash is, and then put the trash in part over where that 40-foot or more wide area is, so that I don't know how often the trash is coming, but it just seems like maybe if it wasn't all congested in one place, it would be preferable, because I think it is going to be a challenge in terms of signage and also just in terms of entrance and exit, all those vehicles. But I know we've hashed it over. I just thought I would share other people's concerns about that. Otherwise, I thank you for the work that you put into it, and I think it's going to be a great addition.
Great.
Any other comments, questions before we close? Okay.
This is Chris. One comment in regards to Christy, your statement about the landscaping along Bridge Road. I agree that there's not a lot of sunlight, but there's probably enough. And I would say at the most, I think those are really important, all those foundation plantings. I agree with checking the varieties, but I think another thing they can do is some soil amendments when they plant there. And if they have a problem, they're going to be totally within their backfill for that parking ramp. So they can just make sure instead of 6 inches of topsoil, they might have 12 or 18 right where they're putting all those planting beds in. I think that's something that can be handled with the construction, since all that soil is going to be replaced.
I think so. I was just thinking about all the salt coming off the road, and with plowing, there's going to be a lot of salt.
Right. One thing I like, and I don't know if it's further out, but if I have it right, I believe you're about 13 feet behind the sidewalk. Is that correct with the building now?
All right.
I think I saw 18 feet from the front side of the sidewalk. So it might even be a hair more than our first iteration. And 13 feet back, we'll certainly have salt issues in the terrace, and some might pop over the sidewalk, but these planting beds are even further back from that. So I think they have a good chance where they're at.
Sounds like maybe.
Okay, is this a comment?
Yeah.
Great. So this is a consideration of action. Do I have a motion?
Hey, Nancy.
Yeah.
Hey, Nancy. This is Steve. Can I just make one quick comment? Can we, as part of your motion, and I'm just I'm thinking through and taking all your comments in. I can appreciate them on the parking garage entrance. As part of your motion, can we have a little bit of flexibility to continue working with staff on that public parking garage entrance? And if there's somehow, some way we can make it work where it's currently shown, we will try our best. We just, to this point, have not been able to. And so we would like to get approval the way we have it shown on this plan, but if for somehow we can get it back to where Adam has it on his 3D rendering, we can get, Strand on board and our engineer on board with something that makes sense and staff approves it, maybe we could be extended that flexibility as part of any approval tonight.
I think that could be arranged. Thank you for offering that. And we didn't bring it up as well. You mentioned, Steve, as well, that you would meet or exceed what is the parking. I think you said you're at 56 now, right?
Yep.
And you need to be at 58. So you agreed, while you're not showing 58 in the plan, that you'll come up with 58 minimum, right?
Yep, we would meet enough parking. We will provide enough parking for our project per code plus 58 stalls.
Right, got it. Do I have a motion?
This is Chris. I'll move approval with the findings of fact as written by staff. Conditions 1 through 9 is written by staff. Modify condition 10 that final paving and repairs done to any city property shall be approved by staff. Conditions 11 through 14 as written. Condition 15, which would be compliance with the engineering report and final approval on that by staff. Condition 16, that the revised public entrance final configuration shall be as approved by staff and discussed at the plan commission meeting. And if there are major changes, then it'll need to come back to plan commission. When I say major, I think something out of the scope of what I can't comment on it yet. I'll comment later. 17, this is subject to final approval by CDA and staff. 18, that the final lighting fixture styles and colors shall be approved by staff. 19, that the final landscape plan shall be approved by staff. 20, that adequate signage to identify our public parking areas be provided. 21, the final pool fence design shall be approved by staff. Oh, I just ran out of conditions. That's it. No, I didn't. Yes, I did. That's it.
Do I have a second?
One just quick amendment to what Chris just proposed. I think item 20, parking and wayfinding signage, I think should be highlighted.
I will take that as a friendly amendment.
Okay.
And clarification, is the pool fencing, do you mean the fence around the pool or the screening?
I mean the fence around the pool.
Okay.
The fence around the pool, we need a second to discuss it, do we not?
Yeah. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, I'm just,
That's
the reason I put that in there is because it was a recommendation by staff that it's secure around the pool. So the reason that's in there is so that staff, whichever department it was, can make sure that there's adequate security around the pool.
Okay. Any
for
other
my-
discussion?
for-
Chris,
yes.
A couple of things you wanted to say after
Yes.
the motion?
Yes, condition 16 was worded that way because we've had quite a discussion on it tonight. I think it's clear that most of us would prefer that entrance where you can see it from the park. I loved it when I saw it there, but if it's really prohibitive to get it there, then we've seen a revised version just tonight that still has some issues to work out. Now, we've talked about a lot of those, and I believe staff and Strand can work those all out. But for some reason, they come back with some out-of-the-box idea we've never even seen or thought of. And if staff thinks it's a big enough change to what we've discussed, then they would bring it back to Plan Commission. I don't anticipate that, but it's always a possibility. Condition 17 was subject to final approval by CDA and staff, and that pertains to the parking issues that CDA is happy with the deal they made with them. And I put staff in there because if it's minor changes and they can get those stalls in there, we're great. The final landscape plan, I put that in there because you've heard the discussion. I think, I'm probably getting big in the picture, aren't I? So I think the one corner where there's a little more brick, maybe you could adjust things a little bit to get a little more landscaping there. Talking about the shrubs on Bridge Road, if you need to put some soil amendments, just having the soil there. I think, Steve, your landscape plan is really good. I think for a 2-level parking structure, you did really well, but you're never going to get to the points that our code asks for on something like that. But I think there's some little tweaks. And I think, Doug, I believe you have a good enough feel for what we talked about tonight that you're comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. 20, obviously, the signage and the wayfaring. That's just to make sure you have to come back with a signage plan, but this is the one that says we have to make sure we identify public spaces well enough. And I'm sure that goes back to the 58 stalls that are public. And Josh, I changed number 10 a little bit depending on how your number 10 it really pertains to you, but they might come up with creative ways where they don't have to take out pavement. They might be in the pavement. They might, to get that public parking at the other corner, they might have to do some adjustments to our utilities and sidewalks. So that's really to be able to work with you, and you can have oversight. And I said staff, but you of course are working with staff. You have oversight on what they do within the public areas.
Is there an option to add a condition about the screening wall as well?
Absolutely. What would you like?
I would like to amend the motion to add another condition that we approve the screening wall design. I don't know if that's in the
Staff approval or
staff approval.
We haven't seen the screening wall design.
Below the pool, or which screening wall are you referring to?
The street level, to screen the pool mechanicals.
The mechanicals, that's what okay. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay,
can we have that be plan commission approval? Because that is a really big space. I feel like that might be a good one rather than just staff approval on that one.
We sure can, and I don't think it would slow down construction whatsoever. And I know Steve likes coming back to see us. So, we have a motion. We'll add a condition. I'll make a motion. We add condition 22. I knew there was a 22. That the street level screening wall come back to Plan Commission for final approval.
Well, and I know how creative all of these gents are too, so I'm sure that they'll come up with something that's really snappy. Right, Steve?
Absolutely.
On that vein, I really think you were incredibly creative on this from where we first saw it. I mean, it really pays to go back with your architect and you and Aaron and put your heads together. I think this is so much improved from what we saw on the pre-hearing. I really applaud you for what you've done.
Great. Thank you.
It was worth the wait. I need a vote. All those of approving the motion as written.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Congratulations, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending another Monday evening with us. We missed you.
Yeah, I miss you too. Hopefully we're in person for the screening wall presentation.
Right.
Yeah, man.
When's groundbreaking?
No, as soon as we can. We're hoping our state review is June 10th. So we're hoping that we're able to be on the ground that week.
Right. Well, thank you again.
All right, everyone. Have a great evening.
You too.
Good luck,
everyone.
Okay, we're gonna move on to reports of staff and commission members. 7A, staff report regarding status of development project proposals.
Thank you. So the one thing that I wanted to bring to the commission tonight was the planning and zoning procedures manual. You'll have found that included in your packet. This is a document that goes back quite a long way. I think the first iteration was from about 2014. And this is something that both myself and Elisa, and really a big kudos to her for the design work that she did on this, have put in to really re-energize the document and bring it to what you see today. So a lot of the information was pretty similar, but we were finding that we were getting a lot of questions about, the process, the development process, and really we wanted to make a document that was friendly for everyone, from anyone that's looking to put a shed in their backyard all the way through to the scale of a project that we've seen come through tonight. So we looked at a lot of examples from around the country, used the framework that we already had, and then of course made updates and tweaks. The sign code section needed to be completely revisited with the new language, and just catch any errors that we thought we saw in there. But we see this as kind of being an outward-facing manual that will be pretty much on the homepage of the planning page of the website. Not many of them have very good visuals, so we worked hard on trying to add some color and some life to the document. So we really think that we've got a good manual here that will be helpful and stand us in good stead. But I wanted to bring it to this body for feedback. This is still hasn't been published yet, but with this group's blessing, we'll put it up pretty soon. So I just wanted to get some feedback.
I think it's a great document, Doug and Elisa, nice job. It was the first thing that I read when I received the packet, and I went through the whole thing and thought, this is very, very well done. I think to your point, it should really help the layman as all the way through to the developer. One comment, I saw one typo, and that's pretty impressive for the whole document. Page 21, the word exceptions in all caps is spelled wrong.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
I would just, I want to echo what's already been said. And I know from experience working on Earth Week there that Elise has all kinds of hidden talents. One of which is graphic design that I had no idea until she started working on some flyers for us. And I was like, oh my God, where did this come from? And obviously she put this to work with this document too. So, I just really can't thank you guys enough for tackling this. And I was going to say the probably two harshest critics here, just because of their experience in a million communities, would be Josh and Chris. And so if they have reviewed this and like what they see, that says a lot. So again, thank you to both of you.
Thanks.
Chris does have a couple comments.
Okay.
Sorry.
No,
Again, I like this. I like it presented.
I wasn't going to leave you out.
Okay. I like the way it's been presented and everything. I think it's a great document to have, but I have a few comments, maybe corrections I think should be corrections. Starting on page 3. This is fine for single family and 2 family, but it's not accurate for commercial projects. And we almost should have 2 sections, 1 and 2 family and then commercial, because any change to a zoning permit in a commercial district requires a change, a zoning permit again, or a change. And the way this talks about, you could put a shed or a garage with just a building permit. That's not accurate in commercial districts. Most of these, as I go through this, a lot of these things are accurate for single family, 2 family, but not so much for a lot of things that we see as plan commission. Sure. I'll go down to site. You talk about just erosion control plans or water quality plans. Any change to a parking lot, landscaping, electrical on any commercial site, any substantial change needs to come back to Plan Commission. Mm-hmm. Because any commercial site has a conditional use permit, and those conditions are on there based on what was presented. So any substantial change, I know Doug, you and I have talked about this, when they do this really minor modification to an entrance or something, you and Brian talk, you check with the chair. If it's minor, you let it go. But for example, anything major, if I were a commercial business and looked at this and said, oh, great, I don't need any of that. So I think we need to touch that up. If we go next to page 6, my suggestion would be on your flow chart, the diamond says complies with zoning code. Really, I think after the formal hearing, it should just say permit approved ? And then either yes or no. Because that's actually what we're looking at. The timeline seems a bit tight to me. So I would take a look at the timeline. With this timeline, you know, you have to hit it just right. Sometimes an application goes in and it has to be in at least a week before the plan commission meeting, right? And it could be more than that. It could be a couple of weeks. The permit could go in quite a bit before that, and then there'll be a pre-hearing conference if everything goes well. And if they get all the revised documents in within a week before the next plan commission meeting, it could be hit. But I would leave yourself some room, because that rarely happens. There's always this little bit of time in between, or they don't get their material back in and they look at this, say, what? Well, you said I get approved in 2 to 4 weeks. Well, it's difficult. Yes. So I would look at the timelines. On page 7, in the big square blue thing about planned community development, at the very end of it, it says requirements of conventional zoning districts through the use of objective standards. I would suggest it might be subjective standards, establishing goals and criteria rather than the application of a fixed formula. A fixed formula would be objective, but really within planned community development, we have some leeway on how we do it, which gives it a little more subjective and not quite as objective, if that makes sense. Otherwise, it seems like redundant to say objective and a fixed formula, because that's almost the same thing. Yeah. I'm so glad you're on here, Mary, because now I have 2 council members and the mayor. I'm on page 11. I did not understand that we still had this in our ordinance, the protests. And here's what I'm going to speak to about that. The way this is worded, with only 20% of the NIMBYs, and there's always NIMBYs, no matter what the proposal is, there's always somebody that doesn't want it. And with 20% saying, I don't want it, we need to have a super majority. We need to have 3/4 of the council vote in favor. So in that case, with 6 council members, we have to have 5 council members, 5 out of 6 vote in favor of it. Otherwise, it's turned down. So an example I'll use, say we wanted to redevelop the area across from the high school, and some developer assembled a bunch of land. And once they assembled it, there's probably 10 residential properties around it that abut it. If 2 of those property owners don't want it, they can petition to the council. And now you cannot lose more than 1 vote on the council. So even though you have 4 out of 6 council members for it, it loses. That's a high bar. And I've worked in other communities where they had the same thing, and they actually went in and redid it when they rethought it, because they saw what a high bar they were creating for themselves. And it was that exact situation where there's a couple NIMBYs didn't want it. It's not unreasonable to think 2 out of 10 will say, I don't want this. And then if you have 1 council member that for some reason can't vote or is uncomfortable, they only have to turn 1 more. And now a proposal that 2/3 of the council wants, because I believe you only break a tie, do you not, Mary?
Right.
Yeah, so if a proposal that 2/3 of the council wants is turned down in that case. So I only bring it up because I've seen it in other communities, and it has been an issue when the protest has been brought. It's something that you should at least discuss with the council. And if it's something that you think merits it, I suspect you'd want to talk with Bill Cole too about it.
Right.
But perhaps you might want to amend this a little bit. It seems to me that we're setting a very, very high bar for ourselves, something that could get turned down pretty easy. Again, not plan commission, but I'm so glad I've got almost half the council here.
Well, Brian and I can certainly talk about it and discuss it with Bill and bring it to the council. Depending on
well, if you think it merits attention. I'm just bringing out the situation I've seen happen. I've seen it happen that got turned down, and the majority of the community and the council were not happy about it, but it got turned down because of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of communities have had it in the past. It's just like, whoa, we didn't know they were going to use it like that.
Anything else, Chris?
Oh yeah, my question on 17. I just don't remember. It seems to me on item number 4, it seems to me on some of our planned community developments, Doug, we've actually done them. Did we create an exception where we've done them without 40 feet? Oh, my papers are in front of my face, sorry. Without 40 feet or 60 feet of frontage. I believe we have, and I believe in some instances, we have actually reduced the frontage a little bit because there's been some extraordinary cases. So the only thing I would add to that would be word it the way you have it, but unless a variance or an exception to ordinance is granted by, and it might be, well, it has to go through the common council too. So it'd have to be plan commission and common council.
Yes.
The other thing I would bring up on that page, there's a number of them like it. On your flow chart, you have the review by Public Works going to directly to the council. And in the past, we've always asked for those to plan commission before we make the recommendation, because the final recommendation of council is made by plan commission. And we very much want to see Public Works comments before we go to that and incorporate that. So yes, I take that arrow instead of going down to common council, take the area from Public Works back to plan commission. And that's at least the way we've always handled it in the past. And I believe if you go back to the ordinance, it requires the recommendation to come from plan commission. Certainly the Public Works report, if plan commission were ever to do something against the Public Works report, that'd be included as a part of record to the report to the council anyway.
Sure.
Same thing on the next page with the flow chart. Same thing on the next page with the flow chart. My question on page 20. Oh, the home occupation. It says no signs, but when we just recodified for signs, did not we allow a small sign for a home occupation? Check the sign code. I didn't have a chance to check it before tonight, but I thought when we did our recodification for a sign code, we allowed minor signs. Maybe we didn't, maybe we excluded it. We had a lengthy discussion. Sue, do you remember you were on that subcommittee?
Yeah, but minor, which part? Minor signs of
home occupations.
Home occupations.
I'm sorry, on page 20, number 2, decision, and
okay, right.
Oh no, it's not decision. Somewhere in there, it's about the home occupation is not allowed a sign. And I know we had a lengthy discussion on it. Maybe just double check to make sure that's accurate and that we didn't allow any kind of signage for home occupations.
Yeah.
And then on page 22, it says appeals on signage code exceptions. Any person affected by a decision of the zoning administrator, I think you should add plan commission in there too. So any person affected by a decision of the zoning administrator or plan commission may petition for a hearing before the zoning board of appeals, because at times they ask us for sign exceptions too, and we may or may not grant them. And that's still, it tells where that path for appeal will go.
Yes.
And I think this is just a tab that took a free ride. I think that's it. Thank you.
Does anybody else on the commission have feedback for Doug as it relates to this new manual?
Like I said, one revision.
Okay.
No, I was kidding. That was in response to Chris.
Sorry.
Yeah, good comments, Chris.
I just would say quickly, huge improvement. Nice job, Elisa and Doug.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
On page 20, it sounds like you're gonna maybe make a change on that. I think on point A, there's a capital A and there's just a space missing, super duper small.
Yes.
I caught one more typo too. In the footer on pages 3 and 4, approval is missing an A.
Yes. Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else? Okay, great. Again, kudos, Lisa. Thank you so much. Goddess Alyssa, as I like to call her. And thank you to Doug. I know it was a lift, and it's well worth the update, I'm sure, for everyone involved. So thank you.
Thank you.
Potential upcoming items.
Yes, I was hoping to just try and work on the scheduling with with regard to the zoning permit that we had the pre-hearing conference for tonight. As the applicant shared, it is a time-sensitive issue that he'd like to have considered. I know our next meeting is Memorial Day, and so last year what we did was we met on the Tuesday following, so the day after. And so we can discuss this offline or just get feedback now, but my first thought was to hold it before the CDA meeting on the Tuesday. I suspect it'll be a light agenda, but so that Mr. Jones can be heard, possibly at 6 o'clock on the Tuesday, the 26th. Would be my thinking, but we can, I can send out an email after to finalize.
I think we're all going to be out of town.
Sorry?
I said, I think we're all going to be out of town. No, I'm only kidding. Only kidding. I think we need to help Mr. Jones.
Okay.
I mean, get it in as quickly as we can, you know?
It's free for me.
Free as well.
Free.
Yeah, sounds fine to me.
Yeah.
Great.
Let's get it in.
We'll proceed with that. Thank you.
Great. Great. Any requests?
This is Chris. I just have one comment. I see the landscape or screening wall down at First Supply has been tagged. So should let somebody know about that. Looks like it got tagged over the weekend.
Thank you.
Comment on that. For those of you that were here when we approved that, we were told that we were concerned about tagging because of where it was at and that big wall. And we were told by the applicant that Boston ivy would, within a couple of years, completely cover that wall, which was the anti-tagging kind of solution for it. And it's been a few years and the Boston ivy is doing really poorly. So I don't know if that's something they can look at or if it just doesn't have good soil or what, but at this rate, it's going to take 50 years for that Boston ivy to cover that wall. And that was their intent and their solution for the tagging.
Mm-hmm. I'll look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Any other requests? I have requests that everybody stay safe. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. Well, thank you very, very much. Again, everybody stay safe.
Aye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.